I wanted Thank you, Sarah. So I wanted to start off before we get to the committee report outs. I wanted to give a big thanks to everyone that made this week's meeting a huge success. A big thanks to our presenters, to all of our federal partners, to our faculty reps, to all the FDP working group members, to all the attendees who've logged in and provided great feedback and really important questions. Again, we wanted to extend a big thanks to Barb Gardner of Tufts and all the members of the program planning committee who put this meeting together. It's a lot of work and we're very appreciative. Also wanted to extend our thanks to our fantastic FDP co-chairs, Alex and Michelle, and also recognize Tom Arison from the Academy and Michael Nestor of GWIR. And last but not least, I wanted to recognize Sarah Piechuk, who's the wizard behind the screen here and makes this meeting look seamless. So a big thanks to Sarah for all of her extensive efforts to make this meeting a success. And we will not have any closing remarks, but I did want to remind folks that our next meeting will be in person. It will be at the Mayflower, and it will be on May 22nd through the 24th. So we hope to see you there. And now I'll turn it over to the first report out, which will be the Research Compliance Committee.
Thanks so much, Maria, and just add my thanks to Sarah, who's been a wonderful support system, just leading up to the meeting and throughout the meeting today. Sarah, if I can have the next slide, please. So I just wanted to provide an update for folks very briefly on some Research Compliance Committee activities, and a huge thank you to the Communications Committee who did a wonderful update on the website, but around the same time, they also helped all of our subcommittees and committees receive email addresses. So just to note for everyone that if you have any suggestions, are interested in volunteer opportunities, the Research Compliance Committee and all of its subcommittees now have these email addresses that you can use to reach all of the co-chairs with your suggestions or your interest. In terms of specific volunteer opportunities, those of you that are on the Research Compliance Committee listserv might know this already, and if you aren't on the Research Compliance Committee listserv, it's a great place to be. But we do have 2 volunteer opportunities available right now. We're looking for a program manager, which is a sort of a assistant leadership position for the committee, helping the co-chairs, with meeting the committee's strategic vision. And then we're also looking for a couple at-large committee members. Most of the members of the committee are subcommittee co-chairs, and so these are folks that help bring some additional perspectives. So if you're interested, if you could shoot me an email, my email address would be on the slides, and let me know of your interest, hopefully by Friday, February 9th. Just a couple notes and some activities that the Research Compliance Committee is working on. We've been having a lot of great conversations with the Faculty Administrator Collaboration Team, related to the topic of their session earlier today and how we might structure our change management strategies to mitigate versus add to the burden that researchers are feeling during these times of change or while we're implementing new requirements. We're also keeping an eye to opportunities where FDP might be able to offer resources or assistance in implementing new RECR requirements. And, jumping off that wonderful plenary that we had a little bit earlier today, considering implications of use of AI in research on data sharing, as well as things like the data transfer and use agreement templates. I'm sure we'll hear a more updated or a more detailed update from our COI committee, who had a great session where they shared updates like their new management plan compendium and their active COI survey. And we had a wonderful session from the Research Security Subcommittee related to the new research security training modules that were released at the end of last week. And now I'm super excited to hand the virtual mic over to Aubrey Schoenleben, who was going to give us a detailed update on the Compliance Unit Standard Protocol, or CUSP database.
Thanks, Melissa. Hi, everybody. Next slide, please. So I guess I'll just start with this brief background on CUSP in case there are folks in the audience who are not familiar with this project. So the primary goal of this project is to create an online space where participating institutions can share standard procedures that are used in animal research protocols with one another. And this is a burden reducing initiative of the 21st Century Cures Act. Next slide, please. And we feel that developing this tool will have a number of benefits for our community. First and foremost, we do think it will reduce administrative burden, not only for researchers, but also IACUCs and IACUC support staff by decreasing the amount of time it takes to put together a high quality animal care protocol and get it through the review process. We also feel that this tool will help us to increase consistency, not only within a given institution, but also across institution, which is really important as our research environment is becoming more collaborative and integrated. It certainly touches on those concepts of, reproducibility and just kind of ensuring that there's transparency in how procedures are done so that data can be reproduced. And also it's just a great knowledge sharing tool. If I have a really nice procedure written up, there's no reason why Melissa can't use that procedure. If I'm willing to share it, she could use it as is if that fits her research needs, or she can use it as a really great starting point and then build and modify it from there to fit her own particular needs. Next slide, please. So an update on the current status. So we have had a little bit of a delay due to funding, but we are back on track now, thanks to FDP. So a big thank you to the FDP Foundation for helping us work through and find a solution there so that we can get across the finish line with our development goals. We've now returned to a more regular development cadence. We've got 2 rounds of development completed and related testing completed under our belt in this last phase, and that's all gone very successfully. So although a bit delayed, we are still very much on track to pilot the site this year, as well as opening it up to the FDP community. So we're really, really excited about that. And in anticipation of that, our working group has really been focused on community outreach, participating in a number of different conferences and booths throughout the year, just to get the word out about this resource and kind of a status update to the community. There's also been a lot of focus just on creating user guidance so that there is support whenever the site does go live for users to know just kind of expectations within the system and how to use it and how to get help. And so we've also been kind of refining our internal business processes as well, just to support that. And then next slide. And so kind of what can you do now to prepare for the launch of CUSP later this year? If you're an institution with an animal program and you're interested in potentially participating in CUSP, now is the perfect time to start getting institutional buy-in, have those conversations with key stakeholders within your institution about how CUSP can benefit you and your community. That QR code there takes us to our CUSP page on the new and fancy FDP website, where you can download a really nice one-pager that sort of gives you a high-level summary of kind of benefits of CUSP for your institution. So that can really just help you get that conversation started. Also is a really good time to start considering who within your institution will serve as an institutional representative, which is going to be a really key role in the system. That'll be the individual who's responsible for managing procedures and user accounts on behalf of your home institution within the system. So definitely worth putting some thought into that. And then lastly, just it's a good time to start reviewing our participation agreement, which will just outline kind of roles and responsibilities of all those involved. So just taking time to look at that and think through it and vet it as needed internally. So those are, 3 good tasks that you can do now while we're kind of getting through this last stretch of development and into pilot testing. And those were all the slides that I have. So I'm happy to take questions in the chat, and I will hand my virtual mic over to the next team.
All right, we have no questions in the chat. So the next group is the subawards update.
Hi, everyone. Our subawards met, we had our session on Monday afternoon, and I'm going to talk about really just three things here. One, I'll start with the volunteer situation. I did on Monday put out a call for 2 additional co-chairs at the Monday session and asked people who are interested to express their interest via the FDP website and the volunteer functionality there, which is what we use to build our standing subcommittee, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Anyone that might be interested in joining as a co-chair, please reach out to subawards@thefdp.org and I can answer any questions you have or set up a call. I mentioned the standing subaward subcommittee. So really the subaward subcommittee has been co-chairs plus a few working groups rotating in and out over time, but we recently established an actual standing subcommittee with 18 active participants. We've met twice so far in the last few months and plan to meet quarterly going forward. And this is just an opportunity to kind of take more interesting and complex issues to a group of people for discussion, a group of representatives from different types of institutions, institution types, geographic areas, institution sizes, to talk about some things that come up in the subawards world. So it's not just 1 or 3 co-chairs making decisions. So we want to build broader consensus to check in with more people before we finalize or move forward with anything, and to increase transparency with what's going on in the subawards subcommittee. So that is up and running. I'm looking forward to working with these 18 volunteers on a quarterly basis going forward. The 2 topics we talked about on Monday, I'll start with the revised, updated templates. So our most important tool that the subaward subcommittee maintains is our various subaward templates and samples and their associated resources. Carrie Chesborough from Stanford and Beth Kingsley from Yale have led that charge of our regularly scheduled every few years updating, revising these templates. Fortunately, we're not talking about major overhauls here, but minor corrections and updating the templates to reflect new policies that have emerged over the last couple years. We posted drafts to the website for everyone to review, and we surveyed the subawards community to see what feedback they had on those drafts. That survey just ended. We're finalizing the drafts, and we're going to make them official and publish them on the FDP website on March 1st. There's usually some time lag after revised templates get posted for institutions to adopt them, but please be prepared to do so shortly after March 1st. And we will make it very clear and announce to everyone when we do update these templates. And the second topic is the major topic in the subawards world, the NIH final updated policy on subaward and consortium written agreements, in particular, the changes to the grants policy statement to ensure access to lab notebooks, data, and other supporting documentation at foreign subrecipient sites that for information that goes into that supports research outcomes detailed in the RPPRs. So there were a lot of great questions and comments during our session on that topic in particular. I thank you for everyone that came prepared and was willing to share what their institution is doing. And still need to work through what we saw in the chat, still need to work through some of the comments and feedback that we got. But just so everyone knows, the subaward subcommittee will likely add a specific reference to this policy in the NIH version of our foreign subaward sample, and we will also address this in the FAQs. That's all I have for now. I'll take any questions in the chat, and I think I'm handing it off to conflict of interest.
No questions in the chat. So we can move on to conflict of interest. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Just a few updates. So I am stepping down as co-chair of the the conflict of interest subcommittee, and then April Pepperdine is going to be stepping forward, and I'm very excited to welcome April into this role. Right now, we have a survey on COI practices that is live through February 28th, 2024. If you have any questions about completing that, please email coi@thefdp.org. And then we have a few documents that are pending final approval before we can post them to the website, but we've got a template management plan tool to help institutions with different sample language to use in various situations for when you have a conflict of interest that you're trying to manage, and then also some consulting addendum resources. And last May, when Mike Lauer came to speak to all of us, he talked about these consulting addendum the consulting addendum, and how important he thought it was, and making sure that everyone had clarity on the relationship between the parties. So we thought that that would be an interesting resource to have available. From this week's, we had a very exciting session. As I just talked about, the things that we're kind of midstream on, but we are exploring some new opportunities, including a new project on mitigation plans for federal funding agencies like Department of Energy and Department of Defense. And we hope to be able to partner with the Research Security Subcommittee and with hopefully with some federal partners on those. And then we talked a little bit about impact and the use of AI in the conflict of interest space, and what's appropriate and how institutions can do that. And then we also had a discussion of mitigation plan documentation around space use, visiting scholars, and the reporting of gifts and startup funds. We are always welcoming subcommittee members, so please email coi@thefdp.org if you have any suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you. We had a request for the link of the COI survey, and that was taken care of by April. So thank you. And now we'll turn it over to the Foreign Influence Working Group. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah. Thanks, Maria. And you can go into the next slide. Thank you. It's no surprise to anybody here that there's been this enormous activity in the research security space since our last meeting. FIG's a little different than some of the other committees because it's cross-cutting, as you may know, across the FDP. So it has representatives on the working group itself from all of these other committees, which is why we have the kind of rich connections that you've already heard about and you'll hear about more. But we are looking, and you'll see here, I'm going to talk about some volunteer opportunities that either the Foreign Influence Working Group or the Research Security Subcommittee most likely will be putting out relative to activities we're doing. So of course, that the common forums are out. We're very excited about that. And you've already heard from Kevin about the new NIH Foreign Sub data access requirement. And of course, that's also been a discussion in FIG. Since the last time we met, you may recall that we presented in the September meeting about a whole bunch of different research security areas that FDP could potentially pursue. And we needed to winnow those down because there was basically too much there for us to take on. And so both the Foreign Influence Working Group leadership and the Research Security Subcommittee leadership met with FDP leadership, Maria and Alex and Michelle, and talk through what might make the most sense for FDP to pursue. So we started by saying we think we want to focus on possible demonstrations for our MART tool and also risk mitigation tools, and then potentially a definition glossary. So you'll probably be hearing volunteer opportunities relative to those. Our MART tool, which is the matrix to assess risk and transparency, is about knowing when you need to do a disclosure. And that product has been already demonstrated to the National Science and Technology Research Subcommittee, but since we last met, also to the FBI. Amanda Humphrey and Robin Sear did that, and it got very positive feedback. And that's also helping us feel like it's really going to be a good tool to potentially move forward into a formal FDP demonstration. We had 5 amazing federal panelists for our session this week. We had more than 500 people attend this session. So we had NSF, NIH, DOD, and DOE participating in this week's session. And we talked about the PAP guide coming out from NSF with the new, of course, Common Form implementation, the first actual implementation of the Common Forms that we've seen, and the fact that there will be these malign foreign talent recruitment program certifications, both for investigators and for sponsored projects offices that will be going into effect later this year. I know that Doug is going to talk more about the research security training modules. We were very excited to have those come out last week. Then the Common Forms have been, one of our big questions has been, what are the other agencies doing? We know what NSF is doing, and we know that NIH is very committed also to getting the Common Forms out. And another question is, when are they coming out? And if the agencies are going to make any changes to those Common Forms. So NIH confirmed that they are well down the path and they do not intend to make changes to the form. And we were very pleased to hear from DOD that DOD is also working on finalizing arrangements and trying, no promises, but trying to make no changes or very few changes, and across all of DOD. If they're successful in doing that, that's going to have a huge impact for all of us. DOE also reported that their mid-review of the forms, they couldn't really tell us what the outcome of their review is yet, but they're very actively looking at them. And so that was encouraging as well. Sarah Stalker-LaHoo is able to report to us that the NSF Secure Center that's called for in the CHIPS and Science Act is scheduled to be awarded in August of 2024. So that's going to also give us an additional tool and resource that we'll all be able to go to as we try to manage foreign interference or foreign improper influence types of things. And then finally, we learned yesterday that the foreign gift and contract reporting tool, this is just for countries of concern, with amounts over 50,000 is going to be released in demonstration mode at the end of May. And our first report will be due July 31st. And we will have access to the production system a month before that. So we're not going to have a whole lot of time for that first report to get that in, but at least it's not every foreign transaction. It's only from our standard 4 countries of concern that will have to do that. So you can tell already that there was a lot of richness. We also got a huge number of questions at the session that our panelists were great about answering, and we will continue to keep everyone informed going forward. So I'll check chat and answer there as well while others are moving forward. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Pamela. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat.
Good. Okay.
Yep. So we'll turn it over to the Research Security Subcommittee. Thank you again, Pamela.
Next slide. So I wanted to update on since September of 23 what we've been doing. And one of the biggest items is the International Agreement Risk Assessment Matrix that we're working on, which really is putting together different types of risks, such as country and source of foreign funding and the types of U.S. federal agencies and their matrices to try to help administrators and faculty to put all of the risk elements together to end up being a tool for decision making. So that's one of the areas that we're involved in. And also there was a collaboration with the Central Midwest Research Security Forum to discuss research security program standards, as all of us are anxiously waiting to see the final. So there are volunteer opportunities, possibly participating in a demonstration of an International Agreement Risk Assessment Matrix. And there's 2 committees, the Foreign Influence Working Group, as Pamela talked about, and RSS have proposed demonstrations or phased approaches to implementing research security standards. So if you're interested, you can contact me at the email address. So the major takeaways from the committee session was on the NSF research security modules. And for me, the NSF purpose stood out in my mind from Dr. Steele. Talk about building awareness and protecting the United States researchers' time, their effort, their intellectual property, to strengthen national security and to meet federal requirements. So these are excellent points to make. Now, there's 4 modules, and I've put the link down at the bottom of the slide here, but there's 4 modules. So what is research security, disclosure, manage and mitigate risk, and international collaboration? So, they're available in LMS and the Scrum format. They're designed to be integrated into Canon or the sponsored program offices. We can add local content. They're supposed to be between 30 to 60 minutes per module. We'll see if that's how much it actually takes, but the features are extremely engaging. There's a lot of storylines, very interactive, a lot of interactive elements, learning checks, case studies, examples, risk scenarios. There's games, there's hard questions. I know that many of you have already gotten in the middle of it. Some people from my university have already gotten into it and are asking me questions. So it's definitely an exciting time for us to see and how we're going to use them, how we're going to inculcate them into our training modules that we may have at our institutions. But I think that's it. That's all that I have. So I'll turn it over to finance, auditing, and costing.
Thank you, Doug. No questions for you either in the chat.
Sounds good. I think actually I can jump in and do the faculty update. So,
Oh, okay.
So the major activities that we're involved in since our last meeting involve our work with GWIR, the Government University Industry Research Roundtable. The faculty were invited to help co-lead a workshop that was led by the Strategic Council for Research Excellence, Integrity, and Trust, which is led by Marcia McNutt and France Cordova. This workshop focused on new approaches to strengthening the integrity, the integration of scientific integrity and research ethics into the conduct of research, and really reflects the need for there to be more resources to support senior faculty and leaders of large labs and large collaborations when we think about the responsible conduct and ethical conduct of research tools that we provide. I'm going to put a link to that workshop in the chat. What will happen as a result of that workshop is likely to be a new volume that is published by the National Academies Press that is going to provide resources to senior investigators to be able to help them think through the way in which they want to structure their labs, mentor their graduate students, and lean into their role as scientific and research leaders on their campuses and on a national scale. It dovetails nicely with some of the research security themes that are already a big part of what the FDP is doing. I just want to point out that that leadership piece is part of the National Academies conversation that we connect with. A second major activity that's going on is that we're right at the time when we need to be organizing ourselves to implement the next iteration of the faculty workload survey. It is an opportunity for people to connect as volunteers. We are seeking members of a working group for the workload survey. And I want to make sure everyone knows, of course, we hope to include faculty in that, but we would also be looking for administrative representatives to be a part of that working group. It will do its work virtually between now and our in-person meeting, gearing up towards an in-person meeting where we can make decisions about the RFP that needs to go out to be able to implement the survey and the timeline with which we want to do that outreach so that the survey can be implemented, we hope, in early 2025. So that's our planning horizon, which would put us right on step with our prior implementations. And then lastly, we lean also very heavily into the program development. We're very happy that we had a program at this meeting that included Kelvin Drogemeyer, Sheila Garrity, and Jansu Janka, all of which I think speak to the experiences that faculty have either in their work or in the considerations that they have for their efforts I think we all appreciate the plenary that Kelvin provided as well, which I think cut across all of our interests. We spend a lot of time working on making sure that the program has elements that are going to appeal and be of interest for faculty. And of course, we have many faculty working across all of the initiatives that you have been presenting and will continue to present at this meeting. I want to acknowledge the really hard work that our steering committee does. We're a small group relative to the whole of the FDP, but we do canvass the organization, and that takes a lot of effort on a lot of people's part. And part of our effort to increase faculty participation in the committee structure has been to add Laura McCabe as a new member of the executive committee. She's an at-large member and joins myself, Robert Nobles, the vice chair of the faculty committee, and David Robinson to represent faculty committees at the structural level of the FDP. And then finally, as both an action item and a focus of our efforts over this last session, we really, over the time period since our very last meeting, we're very focused on committee leadership and trying to elicit both interest on the part of faculty in serving as co-chairs of our major committees, as well as identifying potential new committees and working groups that might add value from a faculty perspective. So one of those that we're looking at is a possibility of a research leadership committee, which would tie across this On Leading a Lab initiative that's coming out of the academies and I think would be of interest for all of our participants. But we're also interested in potentially looking at a publications committee and thinking hard about how we can leverage our faculty relationship with our academic organizations to bring value to the organization as a whole. So that's our update. And again, we're very grateful for the opportunity to share our perspective, and thought this was a great program from our perspective.
We're not seeing any questions in the chat, so thank you for that update, Michelle. So next we'll turn it to finance, auditing, and costing.
Thanks, Maria.
Mhm.
Next slide, please. So we had a great session yesterday afternoon. I guess since we last met in September, at the end of December, NASA released some additional information around FCTRs and FFRs. So that information can be found at the link provided. Additionally, NIH is going to be providing additional email for closeout reminders at the 90-day mark. So those email notifications should be going to the AORs at your institution, and you'll be getting that additional reminder at the 90-day post end date. Members of the audit committee have started meeting, and they will start by identifying 2 federal agencies that have a similar finding or findings, and then to look at the potential impact that those findings may cause to institutions, and then where and how FTP can be helpful in mitigating those impacts. We had a number of concerns regarding PMS access issues, and Michelle shared that there's been some additional security and limitations put in place on PMS. So if you are experiencing issues getting access or getting access for members of your team, to please seek guidance from your PMS liaison. You can figure out who your liaison is by going to that link and reaching out to them. Alan Watley was kind enough to join us yesterday, and again, he's always a great resource. And he shared that if you need an FFR prioritized, which we understand that happens, if you need that prioritized for review, please reach out to that email address provided. And they are, I would say, a small but mighty team that is reviewing all of these FFRs, but they do, they monitor that email and they take it seriously when we ask for prioritization of those FFRs. So you can reach out to them at that email. Additionally, there is going to be the grants policy update webinar next week. So if you haven't signed up, there's information at the link there. And then there will be an NSF Grants Conference in May, in person and virtual options. Keep an eye out on that link provided for additional information as it comes out. And as always, if you would like to get involved, please reach out to me. Happy to take more volunteers. And I can do the next one too, if you would like, Maria.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so an update on the NIH data management and sharing pilot. Since we met in September, we've had town halls where many of the NIH ICs shared observations, and we talked about research survey responses that we've received to date. If you haven't had a chance to watch that town hall, it is available online, and definitely encourage you to watch it. I think there's a lot of great insights provided by the ICs that you might find helpful when working with faculty who are preparing data management and sharing plans. We're also very grateful to be featured in the Open Mic blog post. So just kind of helping get the word out that there is a pilot and all are welcome to participate. So that link is also provided. Major takeaways from the session this week. If you need information on the pilot, you can find that on the FDP website. We are currently in phase 1, where we are testing the templates that researchers can use and hopefully provide some feedback on. Additionally, if you are a support provider, library, IT, IRB, research administrator, if you have feedback that you would like to provide on Alpha or Bravo templates, you can do that through a separate Qualtrics survey. And we had a discussion about the institutional acknowledgement of responsibility for oversight and compliance, but we must rely on the PI to be responsible for programmatic compliance. So for programmatic oversight, important distinctions made. And then as far as phase 2, phase 1 will continue operating. Phase 2 will focus on the cost policies, and we know that there are many cost concerns that institutions are grappling with, and in an effort to kind of start from a place that is causing concern at the very outset, which is preparing that budget and determining how much time does it take to devote to this data management and sharing plan that has been developed. We would like to start with a personnel effort calculator. And so if you are using and have developed some sort of tool at your institution that helps to determine how much effort is required to successfully carry out the data management and sharing plan that you have proposed, please reach out to us. Our email address is there, and we'd love to hear from you. And we'd also love for volunteers if you're interested in participating in phase 1, or if you have ideas for phase 2 and those personnel effort calculators, we'd love to hear it. Or if you have sample guidance on budgeting, anything related to budgeting, specifically personnel effort right now, we would be happy to make connections. And again, you can reach out to us at the email provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy, for both of those updates. So far, no questions in the chat. So we'll turn it over to the Research Systems and Technology Committee and Science CV.
Great, thank you. Hi, I'm Lori Schultz. I'm at the University of Arizona, and I am the admin co-chair of the RSTC. My federal co-chair is David Saunders from the National Science Foundation. We have most of our updates are around Science CV this time. So the biggest update since September really is everyone having to use Science CV for NSF proposals starting in October 2023. We heard a lot about that in a couple of sessions during the week, both with RSTC and with the FACT group about what that was like, particularly for investigators who are not biomedical researchers, and getting used to that system and not being in the sort of NLM, NCBI ecosystem with their publications, since they're not typically funded by the NIH. There will be, as we work through some questions with Science CV and with FACT, there will likely be some opportunities in the coming year to work through testing Science CV new features, going through documentation that we are considering proposing to the Science CV team to make this easier for faculty members and research administrators. So as those opportunities come out, we'll be sure to let the community know. One of the things you can always do is you can contact me or David with Science CV feedback or specific issues that you're having that you're not getting a response on, or things that you feel maybe don't need to be solved in the moment of a proposal deadline, but that you're curious about how it's working and what the plans are. Please feel free to send us an email and we'll help you out with those. From this week's session for Science CV and also the conversation with the faculty administrator collaboration team that was this morning, there were a lot of things that sort of came out of the conversations, both from admins and technical reps and faculty. One is that many want an API from your institutional ERA system to create current pending support and other support forms. That is on the Science CV roadmap. They are evaluating what that will take. And while they don't have a timeline for it yet, they're not ignoring that question. They're actively looking at it. One other option is that for ORCID member institutions, if your institution's a member, you can follow up with the kinds of options you have to write information to ORCID records, which can ease the current and pending support and BioSketch process through Science CV. The Science CV team is also investigating a communication method out to users to like how can they talk about things like new features, alerts, outages, issues that people don't necessarily know have been fixed until they try it and realize it has. So that's something that they're currently working on, so that as soon as something like that comes out, we will make sure to send it out to this community. I imagine it'll be some kind of listserv or email opt-in so that you can sign up. As I mentioned before, it remains very clear that Science CV use is challenging for non-NIH faculty. There are ways to smooth this over, but those ways are not obvious unless you've been in the system for a long time. So when I talk about opportunities for documentation and reviewing it, that'll be one of the things we want to work on is how do we get through documentation that's focused on user paths, like I'm an NSF researcher. What is the quickest way for me to get from login to a completed BioSketch, for instance? So there are a lot of ideas churning about that now, and we'd like to work together with the FACT team to get some of that information out there and in front of the Science CV team as well. And with that, unless you have questions, I'm done, and I think the FACT team is next.
Well, we just had one comment from Stephanie Scott about the Science CV listserv, and her comment was, yay, happy to hear about a possible Science CV listserv. So
yeah, they definitely got the message. And I think part of it is just, aside from knowing when things are fixed, just sort of understanding like when are downtimes, when are like as increased adoption of Science CV takes place, that kind of notification is going to be more and more important.
Definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do we have the next group slide? All right, the next group is the FACT, Faculty Administrator Collaboration Team.
Great. Hi, this is Mark Hasselkorn. Could you go to the next slide? I'm just going to use one slide and go through this. So first of all, really, thanks for the shout outs from Melissa Orff and Lori Schultz. It's really great to be having a cross committee interaction. I want to thank Lynette Arias for making that connection, and it's really been exciting and really brought a different perspective to have the group that focuses on collaboration between faculty and administrators, with the group that focuses on systems, with the group that focuses on data. It really, we all have, as we all know, the elephant, it depends where you're touching it. And it's nice to get people touching the elephant at different places. The other thing is this was challenging. We wanted to take a really different view of burden, which is a pretty ambitious thing to do when you're in a group that's been looking at burden for decades. And and focuses all the time. But we think we really did this because we took a step back and we started from a very initial kind of theory model perspective. What is our theory of burden? What is burden? And how does it work in a model of our research enterprise? And I think that went really well. And the nice thing was it set us up for discussion as we went along that really we built on that model. So that was the first thing we did. Then we had this great panel. Steve Post and David Dreisbach presented research on research burden that informed our theory. And that expanded the model. And then Carmen Schultz and Kelly Shaver used the Science CV issue as a case. We were not in there to pick Science CV apart or complain. It was simply that we went from theory to research to practice and then back out again. And so we got a review of the case and what happened and how we would have analyzed it if we had been involved in the rollout. And then we kind of worked our way back from the case and explored enhancements that would have reduced burden and went to general strategies for reducing burden for any changes to research requirements, because part of our model was change produces burden. That was like fundamental number one, and there's no getting around that. And so we extended the model from what we learned during the discussion. The discussion was great. And in the end, we kind of, we looked at various alternatives for reducing burden within our new theory and model of the system. And we talked about how to achieve integrated, community-centered design, development, deployment, and ongoing improvement of changes in a research process. And we talked about all interesting aspects that people brought up, the issues of time, the issues of cost. And we agreed that if we don't do this as a community, that is all three user groups, the agencies, the administrators, and the faculty, if we don't do that as a group up front, we're just paying for it later, and it actually costs more. So this is also cost effective. And with that, I think that's enough. Thanks. We're all excited, obviously.
Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate it. Next is the expanded clearinghouse.
Sorry, let me try that again. I'm Amanda Haymaker. I'm a
Amanda. Okay. Sorry.
co-chair for the expanded clearinghouse, along with Robert Prentice and Jennifer Rodas. So next slide, please. Just a few updates since the last meeting. We have added 5 new participating organizations to the expanded clearinghouse. That brings us to a total of just about, I believe, 340 total organizations, including all the FDP members. We've continued to work on the non-single audit profile and preparing for the pilot that's related to that. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. We've uploaded a revised profile participation agreement to the clearinghouse that addresses just a few cleanup items and the non-single audit profile pilot as well. And then we've also had a few volunteers that joined us over the last few months that will be helping with some profile reviews. Some of the major takeaways from this meetings session, we talked a little bit about our plan for invitations for non-FDP participants. In the past, we have invited 4 times a year, so 1 invitation out each quarter to those who have joined the wait list. And we're going to switch that to a twice a year invite beginning this year. So we will send our next round of invites in March and then again in September. Then one of the other big things we talked about are these conflict of interest questions that we added to the profiles in the clearinghouse. Right now, it is not required that they get answered. There's a number of new conflict of interest questions to address the different requirements at the different agencies and make sure that everybody can answer whether or not they're compliant with the specific agency requirements. But for now, they're not required, although we're going to change that coming in June, where you have to answer them when you go in to make a change. So they've been there about a year. We've been reminding everyone to make sure you know how to answer those questions. I'll admit my own institution is still grappling with how we respond to a couple of them. So we're trying to sort that out before this go live date. But I wanted to make everybody aware that that is coming. And then we talked about a handful of updates we have coming for the system itself. Usually we try to do the updates in January. This year we pushed those out to mid 2024 just to give a little more time and adjust for some things that required a little bit more planning. We're going to remove the Duns field, and then we're going to have the SAM expiration date auto-populate, and that will be able to be turned off if you don't want yours auto-populated, so it could be manually updated, but with the availability of the data from SAM, we're able to make that auto-populate. And then we're also talking about expanding to allow more participants from other countries beyond just Canada that we have right now. I think Australia and the UK are the first ones that we're looking at adding there. And then the expansion related to the non-single audit pilot I'll talk about that again here just in a second. And then we desperately need to capture invoice contacts for our own accounting maintenance. So Maria's shaking her head. She knows all too well how much we struggle with that. So keeping up with all of the rotating staff at different institutions is quite difficult. So we're going to add that contact into the system. Let's see. So then the subrecipient monitoring tools working group, Tyra presented on their behalf today. They have been working very hard on preparation for the INSAP pilot, and they provided a few updates. Right now, 18 FDP member pilot institutions submitted a survey opting into the pilot. They have nominated 40 non-single audit entity participants to possibly participate in this pilot. The co-chairs of the Expanded Clearinghouse and the subrecipient monitoring tools working group co-chairs are making final selections of who will include from those non-single audit entity participants, who's going to receive an invite anyway to participate, and those will be sent soon. Tyra also talked a little about an updated risk assessment questionnaire, or RAC, that is coming soon. It's near completion of its review and analysis, and that should streamline things, but will largely retain the previous format and content. Updates also include revised or added guidance to pass-through entities and reference to associated uniform guidance and other federal regulation and/or resources. Lastly, if you have any questions or need any assistance, there are some emails listed there to reach out to us. And if you have questions specifically related to the INSAP pilot, please include that INSAP acronym in the subject line. And that is all.
All right, there's no questions in the chat, but I just wanted to extend my personal thanks because I know there's a lot of moving parts here. So thank you very, very much for all that work that you do. Before we move on to the FAFATA survey team, I just wanted to acknowledge that there was some kudos from Susan Lund about the FACT session, and her comment was really appreciate the faculty perspective. So now I'll turn it over to Stephanie and to talk about the FAFATA survey, and that is our last update.
Thank you very much. And by the way, I just put in the chat a link to a brand new dedicated demonstration webpage where you can find the FAFATA survey report as well as the presentation that we did today. And it's going to be the place where anything that the FDP does related to FAFATA will be posted on that new dedicated webpage. So if we turn the slide, I'm just going to talk a little bit about today, about what happened at today's session. And so Amanda Humphrey and I
Oh, okay.
co-led. Oh, got it? Okay.
Yep, got it.
Amanda Humphrey and I co-presented today's session. And really, it was just a report out about the survey that we conducted with FDP members, which was at the tail end of 2021. It was an extensive FFATA workload survey where we asked tons of questions related to some basic demographics, how institutions interpreted certain FFATA reporting regulations, and how they reported their FFATA reports and their experience with the Federal Service Desk. And in summary, Amanda and I wrote up this pretty extensive report from that survey, which you could see in the link that I provided in the chat. And it coincided, the release of this report coincided with a very recently released report that was done 2 months ago by the GAO, where they did an audit of USA Spending, which is the portal of which all federal spending is reported out to the community to show transparency of federal government spending, and which is also the portal where FFATA reports on subrecipients are made publicly available as well. And in that audit, the GAO made certain recommendations to the GSA for the modernization of FSRS, which is the reporting service, which is the reporting portal of which FFATA reports are submitted, as well as some recommendations to OMB and to the Department of Treasury. And so our FDP FFATA survey report kind of fills in some holes and answers some questions and complements the GAO report quite nicely. And so the timing of the release of our report really worked out well. And in terms of the major takeaways that we took away, from today's session, is that there are opportunities for the FDP to engage with the GSA as they get ready to modernize FSRS. And there's opportunities for the FDP to partner either in the development of potential training materials or to form a working group and listening sessions so that they can hear what some of the issues are for pass-through entities and how we can work together to streamline and reduce burden with FFATA reporting. So if you have any questions, you can reach out directly to me and Amanda with regard to that FFATA survey report. And that's really all I have. Stay tuned as we release more information and opportunities to volunteer to keep the talk going on this particular project.
So thank you. Thank you. We actually have another update. So just we have the ERI, Emerging Research Institution update. And before we start that one, I did want to mention that Jennifer Rodas posted the link to join the waitlist for the FDP clearinghouse. So that link is in the chat. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. So I'm Susan Anderson, the co-chair of the Emerging Research Institutions Committee. And since our last update, I wanted to report that we have a new federal co-chair, Lisa Scott Mooring from the National Science Foundation. We actually introduced her to the group who were at our ERI session earlier this afternoon. One of the things we've been contemplating is outreach to HBCUs for potential collaborations. And we have also coordinated with the FDP Research Compliance Committee for our session today, which was a focus on responsible and ethical conduct of research in predominantly undergraduate institutions. So our major takeaways: clearly, collaboration with other FDP activities is beneficial. And you've heard that this afternoon in updates from 3 or 4 other colleagues. And so I think that's a really great model that we're following right now. I want to stress how important the May in-person FDP meeting will be for our community building within our Emerging Research Institution Committee. We can see that responsible and ethical conduct of research is a developing area, and we're going to need to figure out ways of achieving the goals of that in ways that our institutions can handle. So we had some really great discussion this afternoon, some great ideas. We may end up with some kind of pilot or demonstration that we develop as a result. It's really important also for everybody who's in the ERI committee to be on the ERI listserv. And I posted there the path to follow to get to that point from thefdp.org. And there is my email address if you would like to contact me directly. I thought this was a great meeting and I appreciate everybody's work on it.
All right. Thank you so much. I understand we have one more slide. Do we have a request from OGRAD for a solicitation?
Yes, I believe Amanda was going to present it for us.
Okay, all right. So you have the floor.
Sorry, I don't actually
don't
have
have a
the
slide.
slide. I don't have the slide. I'm sorry. Let me just very quickly look for it because I know. So I've got it. No, that's the wrong one. Okay. Let me just very quickly share this. We are very excited that the OGRAD group, it has done a lot of work since the September meeting. They've had a new project approved, the HERDS survey workload, in an effort to understand and quantify the process in many institutions to complete the HERDS survey. So that's a really exciting new project that if you are interested in volunteering, it's not necessarily going to go into the data of, you know, what data do you goes into the HERD survey, but more about the preparation process and what's happening kind of under the hood for the institution in order to pull that together. Michael Gibbons, NSF HERD survey manager, will serve as an advisor for the working group, and the initial kickoff meeting will occur in February. And then we have sent out a couple of calls for volunteers. And so if you are interested, please contact the working group leads, Angie Rochat, and then Jen Gare, and their email addresses are here on the slide. And we're just hoping that we will get a good number of volunteers to participate in this working group session, but it seems like a really interesting opportunity to generate a survey, gather some data and some feedback, and then be able to create an analysis and report out. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amanda. Really appreciate that. And just a final thanks to everyone for a wonderful meeting. We really appreciate all your efforts, and we look forward to seeing you either at a working group, hearing from you, or seeing you at the next meeting. Thank you so much. Good night.